Heaven knows Monday mornings are busy enough for Loretta Newman of Dell City. She has trouble with her hands, and it takes a lot of work to get her laundry done. So it made her mad when she received a call asking her to bring her neighbors to the telephone. Loretta asked the caller if he was a bill collector, and he said no, it was a personal matter. So she brought her neighbors to the phone.
And hearing Sammy talking on the phone, I figured out it was a bill collector. And I said, I want to talk to that man. He lied to me. The man did not want to talk to me because Sammy kept talking instead of giving me the phone. So then I took the phone. And I said, sir, you lied to me. You're in trouble. I am not going to take and get people for collecting bills on my telephone and on a Monday. You have made me mad.
Loretta said the caller identified himself as Gary Clark. Her neighbor said he worked for Beneficial Finance of Dell City. Well, Loretta has no complaints with Beneficial Finance. She's had loans with them before and was very pleased with their service. It's the collector's blood she's after. I called Gary Clark at Beneficial Finance here in Dell City, but he would neither be interviewed nor would he make any comment. So I took the matter to Joe Heselton of the State Consumer Credit Department, and he indicated we're dealing in a rather gray area of the law.
Generally speaking, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act applies only to what are called debt collectors.
Heselton explained that the Fair Debt Collectors Act, which tells collectors what methods they can use, has limitations. In other words, if a creditor, such as Beneficial, pays an independent collection agency to collect a bill, that collector would have to follow the Fair Debt Collectors Act. But if a creditor employs its own in-house full-time bill collector, he is not covered by the Fair Debt Collectors Act, although that's subject to change these days.
In other words, it differentiates between going out and hiring a collection agency or bill collector of any type and having your own in-house collection efforts. It also does not apply to attorneys hired by the creditor to run these people down and collect the debts from.
Well, as you can see, the law is not absolutely clear on what bill collectors and creditors can or cannot do to track down those who owe them money. However, there are efforts being made to regulate the creditor's tactics. Right now, Loretta Newman's only recourse is to file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, file a civil suit against the collector, or take her phone off the hook. And if you've got a complaint, write us in your corner. KTVY-TV, Box 14068 in Oklahoma City, 73114. I'm Brad Edwards in your corner. Twelve-year-old Melody Mooneyham was getting quite concerned about the power lines that cross over Southwest 25th Street by her mother's place of business. More than that, Melody was concerned about the pigeons that sit on those wires every day and entertain her. She and her mother both saw a flash from the wires.
Second pole back behind the building there was a large ball of flame shot out of the top of the pole and smoke, and that's when we looked out and saw all the insulation had blown off the wiring around here. And I went in and got on the phone. I called OG&E, and they said that they would have a crew come out within the next couple of days. And that's been 3 or 4 weeks now, and they have not come out. As far as I know, the wiring's still off, the insulation is still off the wiring, and it looks to me like it'd be dangerous. If a strong wind came along, it could electrocute someone.
I was sitting here by the window, and I heard like 5 or 6 pops, and I looked over, and pigeons were flying everywhere, and it looked like some of them fell down, dead. And that's when I went over to the desk and called y'all.
Well, I went across the street to make a pigeon body count, but I found no dead pigeons, just the usual live ones on nearby rooftops. However, a close inspection showed that those wires were a little bit frayed. Well, I asked OG&E officials about it, and repairmen say here lies the problem, an aging utility pole that sits right on a corner of these alleys and has been clipped just one too many times. And they say they feel the last time it was clipped, it knocked a pin loose on the top of the pole, causing one wire to fall across another, and that caused the flash and the smoke. However, they say that's been repaired, and they assure me that all of these aging wires will eventually be replaced. OG&E said what is hanging off the power lines is weather stripping, not the insulation. They say the lines are not dangerous. Therefore, they did not respond immediately to the call because the repairs were of a lower priority, they say, than other needed repairs in the city. Well, if you have a problem and are getting no response, write In Your Corner, KTVY TV, Box 14068, Oklahoma City 73113. I'm Brad Edwards, In Your Corner. Every once in a while, a car rolls off the assembly line that just shouldn't have, and Sergeant Sam Boyle thinks he got one of those cars. He bought a brand new 1981 Buick Skylark, an ex-body car, and he thinks for $9,400, everything should be right about that car. But he noticed sunlight streaming in around the door trim, and a puddle formed on the floor of the back seat when it rained. He had trouble getting the wheels realigned. So he compared the workmanship with his father's 1980 Skylark, and he got suspicious. He found gaps around the driver's door. On the driver's side, the pillar trim was uneven. But on this side, the pillar trim is flush with the roof molding. Sam bought the car from the Ferris Buick dealer in Guthrie. He said Ferris did everything he could to help him, but then he bumped heads with General Motors officials trying to get some satisfaction, and this happened.
Right in the middle of talking to him, this guy from Putnam Buick, I guess he's a body shop manager, walks over with a piece of 2x4 and he wraps a rag around it and lays it up against the leading edge of the door frame and whacks it with a 2-pound sledgehammer. Never asked permission, no nothing. And he just hit it. So we kind of got a little irritated, and we waited for a man.
Did that make it any better?
No, it didn't make it any better at all. I guess he thought maybe it would.
GM officials said the body measurements were within specifications, but a body man that was a friend of Sam's family said it was not. So Sam took the car to Edna Baldwin, a friend that works on the GM assembly line here in Oklahoma City, and here's what she said.
And this window doesn't look right.
Okay, now, let me ask you a question. We pointed out some other problems inside the car, but in your opinion, what can be done to correct this car? Or would it be better just to replace it?
Well, if it's my car, I'd want it replaced.
Why?
Because I wouldn't be able to trust them to be able to fix it right.
After I contacted the Buick zone manager, Doc Riley, an inspection was set up at the GM Training Center here in the city with Doc and Larry Heiss, the zone service manager, an expert. Sam preferred having a new car rather than tearing his car apart, cutting it, and re-welding it, which previous officials said would have to be done. But Larry Heiss said it could be fixed without cutting it down. They were all over that car inspecting it, even the trunk.
What's this piece, Sam?
That's the front end thing. I forget what they call it. It's a wind piece or whatever. That's the second time it's
That's the
fallen
spoiler.
off. Okay.
From underneath?
Yeah, it's the second time it's fallen off.
Well, Sam finally refused their offer to try and repair the car. He and his father measured it again and still felt the car was not assembled within specifications and would never be right. This is a nice time of year to go camping at Lake Thunderbird, but not for 33-year-old Vietnam veteran Mike Becker. He's having to live there in a camper shell provided by a friend. Last month, he had his 6th operation on his knee at the Veterans Hospital here in Oklahoma City and was home living with his wife. How are you living now?
I'm not living, I'm existing. I'm just making it from day to day. My friends occasionally drop by and bring a sandwich or something, you know, and I've tried fishing a little. I haven't had much luck at that, and I'm just existing, surviving from one day to the next.
Can you walk?
Not without a lot of pain.
Now, Mike and his wife have split up, and disability checks stopped showing up. He had nowhere to go but the park. Mike's had difficulty holding down a job. With frequent knee operations and suffering from post-Vietnam stress, he has no family in this area. He says if his disability checks would come in, he could find a place to live and hunt for a job.
I'm upset with this government, this whole government. I joined. I volunteered to go to Vietnam. I didn't run away to Canada, and I didn't wait to be drafted. And I felt like it was my country and something I should go for. And I just don't feel like they're taking as good a care of me as I try to take care of them.
Well, I left Lake Thunderbird, and from Norman, I contacted the Veterans Hospital. They were unaware of his plight, but they contacted the nonprofit Veteran Center in Oklahoma City, and a worker went out and bought Mike a meal, but no one knew what happened to his disability checks. Mike was able to drive in to get his cast removed, but had to return to the park. So while his records were being examined and his problems checked out, we received some help from the business community. Mike Snyder of the Britain Road IGA donated close to $100 worth of groceries to keep Mike from starving until his problem is solved. They also lent him a pair of crutches, since his crutches from the VA had broken. In the meantime, we found that Mike was eligible for rehabilitation in the Tallahena or Ardmore Veterans Homes.
I'm just afraid what they're trying to do is lock me away to where, you know, we can all forget Mike down in this home and everything will die away. And I don't want that to happen.
You want to get back on your feet?
I want to get back on my feet and get back to work. I would like to go back to work at Tinker if I could.
After we delivered the groceries to Mike, we next talked with Rick Merritt of the Veterans Administration office in Muskogee, who put out a search for Mike's disability checks. Rick says one should be in this coming Monday and another in a week. Barbara Rogers and some of the other residents gave me a tour of the Elmwood Mobile Home Park, and it was not a pleasant sight. The wood frame apartments had unrepaired holes in the floors, fallen-in ceilings, and more cockroaches than I've seen in a lifetime. The residents say sometimes they have to get up and shake the sheets at night to get the roaches off them and their children. Yet the apartment manager would not spray the units, they said. The mobile homes are as bad or worse. Holes in the floors, and some had bullet holes through the walls.
Okay, one night about 11 o'clock, we went to the restroom and I started hearing something hit the trailer. I didn't know what it was at the time. It was someone, guy that lived next door, shooting his gun. And there's the bullet holes where it come out of his trailer. And this one went right through the bathroom. I don't know if it went out the other side or not, but there's a hole in the bathroom where if anybody had been sitting, would have got their head.
These faucets will not shut off. They've been leaking for 3 months since the tenant moved in here. And just a few steps away in the bedroom where the children sleep, there's a hole in the floor where the mice come in at night. On top of all the other problems, the natural gas has been shut off, and many have no hot water.
We don't have no gas, then we can't take baths except in cold water. It's hard living with no gas and living in pioneer days.
Yeah. How's it affected your kids?
Badly. They don't like it. They're irritable. They're dirty. I don't know anyone. I can't take them nowhere to take baths. All I can do is wash them off.
The obvious question people would ask is, why don't you just pack up and move out of here?
My husband only brings home $200, $30, $40. We just can't make it.
Barbara says many tenants pay $250 and up for those apartments. How do you like living here?
It's a pretty nice place.
What's your house like?
It's a regular, normal trailer.
Any holes in the floor?
Yeah, one.
Any bugs?
A lot.
What?
A lot of bugs.
Any mice?
Uh-uh.
How do your parents like it?
They kind of like it.
Well, I went to the manager's trailer to find who was responsible for all this, but I had little luck.
The only thing I can tell you right now is under court order receivership right now, and the court has ordered to close down the park. That's the only thing I can tell you at this time.
Is the property condemned, do you know, at this time?
That's the only thing I can tell you.
Who owns the park?
I can't say anymore. We was ordered closed down by the court, and so we're going to take the action as soon as possible, so I can tell you.
See, what's your name?
I'd rather not say.
Well, we couldn't find the owner of this run-down, roach-infested rental property, but we did find some court-appointed attorneys here who say that up until July, this property was managed by Oklahoma City Southwestern College. That's a facility of the Pentecostal Holiness Church headquartered in Bethany. Well, during a legal dispute, it was agreed that court-appointed attorneys would operate the rental units here, but in the meantime, the City-County Health Department inspected it and said, close this place down. So Barbara Rogers and all the tenants will have to move out. The problem now is, with the low income and 3 children, Barbara says there's no place to go. During our visit, Mrs. Doris Bateman, a former owner of the property, arrived. She said she was shocked at the condition of the mobile home park. Her attorney, Charles Stubbs, said they had filed suit to have Oklahoma City Southwestern College removed as a trustee. Stubbs said the Batemans had put it in a trust, hoping to give the college a place for student housing and a place to work and a salary for themselves, never dreaming it would be allowed to deteriorate to this condition. Becker is a disabled veteran recovering from a 6th operation on a wounded knee. He and his wife had split up, and his disability checks had not shown up. So he was living out of a camper shell at Lake Thunderbird when we found him. While we were tracking down the right veterans office to help Mike Snyder of the Puddin Lane IGA donated several bags of groceries and a pair of crutches to get Mike by until the problem was straightened out. Meanwhile, a member of the VFW, who wishes to remain anonymous, helped arrange shelter at the Norman Veterans Center. And when we checked in with Mike, he was sitting by a pool table getting a medical records review from a VA physician. Mike had had a shower, a shave, a good meal, and was in out of the rain.
Well, Brad, this is kind of an unusual case in that this facility is a long-term neuropsychiatric center, but due to the circumstances and evidently this gentleman has nowhere to go, we are making an exception to our policy and will take him in here and let him stay as a domiciliary member until such time as his VA benefits can become straightened out. Also, we have a field service staff that is part of the department that assists veterans throughout the state in adjudication of claims through the VA. And we certainly want to get this unit involved in helping him and working out his problems.
Nevertheless, we're happy to say the Norman Vet Center is helping out Mike, and they, along with an anonymous member of the VFW, are looking into job possibilities for Mike that would not require him to stand on his wounded leg. Now, updating the case of the residents of the Elmwood Mobile Home Park on South Shields. You may recall that Barbara Rogers and other tenants called me complaining the mobile homes and other apartments were insect infested and in poor repair. There was no natural gas for hot water and cooking.
Can't take baths, sipping cold water. It's hard living with no gas and living in pioneer days.
Yeah. How's it affected your kids?
Badly.
Why don't you just pack up and move out of here?
My husband only brings home $230, $40. We just can't make it.
I found out for them that the park was in receivership. The former owner filed a lawsuit against the trustee managing the park, and that trustee was Oklahoma City Southwestern College, a facility of the Pentecostal Holiness Church in Bethany. Meanwhile, the health department ordered the place closed and all the residents have to leave. As it stands now, most of the 50 families have found other accommodations, but because of the tight housing situation in Oklahoma City, some of the other accommodations were as bad or worse than Elmwood. There are about 16 or 17 families still looking for homes, and we've informed them that the Baptist Women's Home or the Grace Mission here in the city will house several families until those can get back on their feet. E.B. Gordon called me, he was getting hot under the collar. It was the first anniversary of his new roof, but it was still leaking. A year ago, wind had torn off part of his roof, so he decided to get the roof and the trim repaired. After taking several estimates, he hired Acox Roofing, advertised in the South Side Shopper. The ad said, 27 years experience, expert at fixing leaks.
He assured us that the leaks was over with. And so I contacted the fella to do the inside remodeling and straightening back up from the previous leaks. And by having this all freshly redone and resealed, there was no way to tell it was leaking until it started coming on through. And as you can see the ceiling now, much of it has came through.
Well, when Mr. Acox finished the roof, he came in and told me that he was through, and I looked up to here and I could see daylight. So I asked him about it, and he said, well, don't know where it's coming from, but it'll never leak. If it does, call me. So I have been calling him.
But every time it rains, water pours in around the kitchen ceiling, and in the utility room, the Gordons have to take the apples out of the bucket and put it under the leaks. The Gordons claim ACOC has come over several times, but the leak expert has not slowed the water flow as yet.
He was either busy or he was sick and couldn't get over here for approximately a month or so, and he'd have various reasons not to come, and we'd say, well, we would like for you to come and verify the leaks while it's raining. And he says, no, I want it dry when I can get up there and see what's happening.
Well, I contacted P.W. Acock at his address on Southwest 11th Street. He was not about to go on camera to discuss his work, but by telephone he told me that he had made several trips over to the Gordons' house and that he thought perhaps hail or storms had caused damage to the roof since he put it on, but he agreed that the roof showed no signs of damage. Acock says it's been a year since he put the roof on the Gordons' house and that after that period of time he holds no responsibility for the work. And I reminded him that the Gordons said the roof had leaked since the first rain after the roof work had been completed. Now, Acock had admitted making several trips over there. Well, Acock said he'd make one more trip over to the Gordons a week from Monday. We told him we'd be there to see if the advertised leak expert could find the leak. Gordon says the insurance company has paid for water leak damage on the interior of the house, but they will not continue to pay for damage caused by the same leak over and over. The homes between Clarence Court and Fox Run Drive are on two levels. The upper level faces Clarence Court, and behind those houses there is a several-foot drop-off, and the slope is on the property of the homes on the lower level. But the slope is causing trouble for homes on both levels because there is no retaining wall to keep the soil from washing away. And make no mistake about it, the soil is washing away, exposing gas meters, a manhole, and the homeowners are understandably upset. They told me they thought a retaining wall was going to be built there.
We were told that there would be a retaining wall along the back of all these lots at the time of prior to closing, which we closed in October, but the contract was negotiated in July.
And who was it that told you there would be a retaining wall?
John Gray's sales manager, Rory Crawford.
As far as what was told to my wife, she was told that there would be a retaining wall put in the area.
Do you recall who it was that told your wife?
I believe Roy Crawford, the sales manager for the developer, or for the builder, John Gray.
My builder said that he would not be responsible for a retaining wall, that it was basically the developer's problem to put in a retaining wall. And it's quite obvious all along this area that the retaining wall should be put in immediately. It should have been put in about a year ago.
Now the story gets complicated. I called Roy Crawford, the sales manager for home builder John Gray. Crawford would not go on camera, but he explains the situation this way. He says when John Gray had an option to buy the lower level properties, Gray intended to build a retaining wall with the help of Fox Run developer C.E. Duffner. And Crawford says that is where the homeowners got the idea that a retaining wall was going to be built. However, things changed. Crawford decided not to accept the lower level properties because he was unhappy with the grading of the land. Well, when that happened, he said he no longer had responsibility for building a retaining wall because the slope is on the lower level properties. Well, then who is responsible for building the retaining walls? Fox Run developer C.E. Duffner says he's not responsible for it. Well, the homeowners thought the city government might take a hand in the case because it appeared to them that much of the land grading in Fox Run was incorrect. Perhaps there was an elevation error made when this development was landscaped. Believe it or not, this is a neighborhood fire hydrant, about 2 feet underground. If they ever have a fire in this neighborhood, firemen are going to have to bring a shovel. I took the problem to City Hall and asked City Planner Dick Bednar if there were statutes that might require a retaining wall be built by the developer.
We are responsible to see that each street drains properly, that if there are need for structures such as drainage ditches or culverts, they are put in. We are limited to those areas. We have nothing to do with the inside lots between the streets.
So it appears that the city cannot enter the case unless water washes down the slope into a street and floods it. Then it becomes a drainage problem for the city. Right now, 5 homeowners are working on a compromise with Fox Run developer C.E. Duffner, and they hope with home builder John Gray and perhaps a few others. Duffner has agreed to pitch in $250 along with homeowner money to build a railroad tie retaining wall. And builder John Gray told me he would agree to put in $100 for each of the 5 lots involved.